Hey there, it's Leanne from Curriculum Solutions Center, and today we are going to look at creating an inquiry-based learning center. And one of the things that I really want to stress throughout this video is the difference between an inquiry-based learning center and a science experiment, a demonstration, or just a touch table. So when we really look at the principles of inquiry-based learning, what we first want to realize is inquiry-based learning starts with questions. It starts with ideas, with scenarios, with a thought that a child has. And our role as teachers is not to show them and demonstrate something, but is to facilitate the building of knowledge, is to provide them with the tools, the ideas, the materials, but letting them really lead the learning in a constructivist manner. And we want them to kind of come up with their ideas on their own, come up with their solutions, come up with different things that they can test. And we want them to be doing these investigations, projects, small-scale research, and you can do this as young as in the early childhood classroom. Children have this great sense of wonder. If you've ever worked with toddlers or had some of your own, you know that the question why happens 100 times a day. So why not give them an opportunity for some inquiry-based learning? So when we start with the inquiry-based learning center, we have a goal. It asks a question. Now I want to show you, I took some yogurt containers and basically put some materials inside them. So this one is labeled beach glass and shells, and I put questions on the outside of the tub. So it says, is beach glass a seashell? Why are some shells different shapes? Where does beach glass come from? And why are some shells different shapes? There's questions all over the outside of this tub, and the materials are quite meaningful. Now I have some different size seashells in here. I've got some magnifying glasses in the tubs for the children to explore with. Some beach glass living along Lake Erie. This is something that a lot of people collect. Beach glass jewelry is pretty popular in this area. I've got some smaller periwinkle shells. Some other really small shells that were collected along the shores of Lake Erie here. Some other shells here. This is some type of mollusk. I don't remember what it is, but it's something we can look up if we're using inquiry materials and methods. But the materials are very meaningful to the children here. Safety is important if it's something you're worried about. If you have a child in the class with a shellfish allergy, make sure you're rinsing these in a sterilizing bleach solution. If necessary, giving them some goggles, aprons, or gloves, depending on the materials. And also, if you're working with young children, screening for choking hazards. Now, these don't pass the toilet paper tube test. Therefore, they are choking hazards for children under 3. Some of these larger materials, not so much. But those are our materials in here. And you start with some questions. How does this work? What is this about? Did something happen that I don't understand? What's going on here? Now, I wrote some questions on the tub here, and I want you to think, are these inquiry questions? Are these questions that are going to lead children to more investigations, to learning more about a subject, and to determining knowledge on their own? Well, let's take a look at the other science tub that I have here for a center. This is our air investigation. And I have some questions on the outside. Is there anything inside a bubble? Can air change things? Does air take up space? How does air move things? I also have some other questions here on the screen. Which ones are the inquiry questions? Well, remember, inquiry teaches children to probe, to ask more. It doesn't have a simple yes-no answer, and it's not a single definition that we can look up in a book, or if we've got our phone with us, asking a digital assistant, or saying, okay, Google. So what we want to look at is the first one, does air take up space? It's a yes or no answer, but we've got to do some investigation to determining it. So if we want to see, does air take up space, I've got some materials in here that are going to let us do that. I've got some balloons. Well, it looks like air has to take up space because whoop, it's filling this up. Does air move? It can move in my party blower. How does air change things? Well, I've got some other things in the tub here. I've got one of these little games that I can see. How does air move things? I popped it up. I've got some straws in here and some feathers that I can look at that way and blow things along. But I've got a lot of different materials, and they all fit in this little tub. I'm seeing, oh, guess what else I have here? I've got bubbles. so I can see what is inside a bubble. We know that it's air, but we've got the things here for the children to try. So the inquiry questions here, we're looking at, does air take up space? How does air move? And can air change things? These are all investigations that are going to lead the children to try more things, to experiment with the items in the tub. What is air? Now that might be a little bit of a harder question for children to learn, establish at the early childhood level. Older children, this is something we just Google. What is air? Well, it's such percent oxygen, such percent nitrogen, another percentage pollution. Am I imagining air? That's a question my 5-year-old came up with. But we're looking again at, that's more of an answer that's going to be a bit more subjective. But looking at what is inside a bubble, we can explore those answers. We can determine more from there. Now, inquiry-based lessons have great verbs. Look at the verbs that we have here. Explore, experiment, question, observe, organize, make, evaluate, choose. They're putting all these different things going on. Now, if we look at the air investigation, we've got all those things going on. They're exploring different materials. They're experimenting with the different types of blowers. With the straws, is the coffee stirrer going to move the same amount of air as the milkshake straw? We can determine this. We can formulate a plan. We can see, can I blow? I know I can blow along a feather, but am I able to blow the bubble container? How can I do this? I can design some experiments. I can formulate hypotheses. And the adult, my job here is just to guide the children along. I provide them with the bucket. I can help them ask the questions that are along the side here. I can ask them deeper questions. Is the same stuff that's in the bubble in the balloon? How do you know? What's going on? How can you tell the answer? But I'm not going to be just showing them and say, look, boys and girls, I'm going to put a feather. That's how it moves. That's air. That's a demonstration. It's not inquiry. Now, when we look at what an inquiry objective formula is going to look like, so if we're giving clear, measurable objectives, here's a good formula. In the inquiry center, children will choose your appropriate verb, list your materials or concept in order to determine, and here's where we put our hypothesis or question. The adult will put an adult verb by and describing an appropriate adult intervention. So here's an example. In the Inquiry Center, learning about air, children will explore properties of air using straws and bubbles in order to determine if air takes up space and how air moves things. The adult will guide the investigation by providing bubbles, straws, balloons, and other materials and questioning appropriately. Now let's take this to about our beach glass container. This Inquiry Center, not so much. Remember, we've got them choosing materials, we've got them choosing activities, but this is a touch table. These are engaging materials, they're materials that are meaningful to the children, but can they ask a lot more questions about it? If they ask, what lived in this shell? Again, I can't learn that answer with these materials. If I see, how was beach glass made? I can't determine this with the materials. I can feel there's some really interesting textures. There's some great sensory things going on. If I really wanted to, I could fill this tub with sand and have them go through it for a great sensory experience. But this isn't an inquiry center. Even if I use my magnifying glasses and try to look at them a little bit more closely, I'm not really going to get at answering some deep questions. Look at the questions that are on the outside of this. Totally different level than the questions on the air bucket. So again, this is a touch table. This is just a sensory exploration area. It's not an inquiry center because we're not building that knowledge. We're not asking those questions. Yes, we have meaningful activities. Yes, we can look at it. We can explore the different things, but not in a way that's going to make us create our own knowledge the way the air bucket will. So when we learn about air, we've got all those different things in there and think, what else could I put in this container? I could put in some pebbles. Maybe they can try to move that with air. I could create a maze and see if I can blow a feather through it with a straw. What other items are going to be appropriate to put in a section about air? I could definitely get some pinwheels. I could put a little battery-operated fan in there to, again, talk about how can we get air to move. How can we get children to see what air can move and what can they do with it? Now, an excellent inquiry center always wraps up with an opportunity for some journaling and documentation. We want to give an opportunity for the children to show what they know. It provides closure to the learning, and it also requires them to synthesize what they've observed and evaluated. So we want them to recall things, we want them to sequence. First I tested the balloon, then I tested the bubbles. I realized that air does take up space because I could fill a balloon with it. We can do this by having them draw before and after pictures. We can do a process illustration. We can do an outcome illustration. If you're working with young children, definitely take dictation. Older children are able to write narratives about this. They can discuss how they tested their hypotheses. You could teach Venn diagrams. I can put air in a balloon. I cannot get air to stay in a straw. I was able to move the little basketball toys. I was able to move the feathers. I was not able to move the entire bucket or the pebbles or the container of bubbles. So when we're wrapping this all up, I want you to think again. Inquiry is a critical developmental skill. It's an opportunity for children to create a hypothesis, develop what they know, ask questions in a safe, guided, and structured environment, where an adult's role is simply to be a facilitator. Our role here isn't to set up an experiment. It's not us saying vinegar, baking soda, bubbles. And by the way, please don't call that an explosion. And a volcano has nothing to do with a vinegar and baking soda reaction. Just a little soapboxing there on that. This is a touch table. This seashell bucket, opportunities for them to explore sensory, but not opportunities for them to explore a hypothesis. So again, at an inquiry center, learn more, do more, create ideas, and explore. Touch table, sensory exploration. A demonstration or experiment is you, the teacher, doing all the work, and the children just watching and processing. So know the difference and get ready to get those kids in there and get their hands dirty. Now here's my contact information up here. You can email me, Lee L. Kramer at curriculumsolutioncenter.com. Find Curriculum Solution Center on Facebook, Pinterest, or Twitter. You can also check us out on this YouTube channel for more great teaching ideas. And I hope to see you or hear from you soon. Thanks a lot.